So yeah, I was going through the news today and saw a lot of people talking about the new Senate appointment in California to replace now Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Of course, she'll be vacating the Senate, and a seat will be up for grabs. California Governor Gavin Newsom will be assigning the new senator. And today we're joined by Andre Stackhouse, who is actually the author of a Medium piece that's been going around a little bit on Twitter and online a little bit, making the case for Senator Khanna, for Gavin Newsom to pick this representative from California Silicon Valley area to fill that vacancy. So welcome to the show today, Andre. We're really pleased to meet you, and thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. I actually haven't been invited on a podcast before, so it's the first time for everything.
Yeah, we're happy to be your first, man. This is exciting for us too then.
Yeah, so I'll pull up your piece here on the subject matter, and we can go through it a little bit. And you can just kind of lay out the case that you made and talk about some of the reasons why you think that Khanna would make a great addition.
Yeah, what compelled you to write this when you did?
Yeah, so I'll say that this is something that's been on my mind for a long time. Basically, as long as I have thought that there was a reasonable chance that Biden and Harris would win, I've been thinking about who should fill that seat, and Khanna did jump out at me as an obvious, solid pick. As for why it was today, I'll just say that, as somebody with my ear to the ground, you tend to, this has been suggested multiple times, and every time I saw this floating around, I thought I should amplify that signal because I think that it's important. And so I started working on this article, and then I caught wind that there would be sort of a push for this today. Justice Democrats and Our Revolution were circulating a petition. And so I thought, okay, next push, I'm going to be ready. So I worked to get this article ready. The organized push went out today. And so I included this along with the hashtags people were using. I was sharing it around on a few different circles to try to get it some better circulation. When you work hard to write something, you also want to do your best to get people to read it. So, I've been doing this a while, and you start to learn how to time these things.
Yeah, and Khanna, of course, has been in the House, kind of repping the more progressive wave, the more progressive left flank of the Democratic Party since before even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or any of the squad members were there in Congress. Khanna has been there, I believe, since maybe 2012. Is that correct?
So Khanna was elected in 2016.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ran concurrently with Bernie Sanders' first run. It's really easy to forget that Bernie's movement is a lot bigger in 2020 than it was in 2016, although it doesn't always appear that way electorally. It can be hard to gauge these things. But so a lot of people who joined on to the Sanders movement in 2020 weren't necessarily there in 2016, and so they're not super familiar with a lot of the things that happened. Before Sanders ran in 2016, there really wasn't anything like the progressive movement that we see today. And so if you were there in 2016, you were like counting on one hand to find Congress members who thought anything like him. So Khanna was a huge deal for getting elected. There was no guarantee that he would. And then for continuing to sort of rep that movement after the Sanders loss, right? So there was also this question after he lost, like all of this energy that sprung up, how much of that is going to exist in 1 or 2 years, right? And so, we saw the formation of Justice Democrats. It was a very small thing at the time. It was a couple Sanders staffers. And
yeah, Roe did the split endorsement of Joe Crowley and AOC, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He did, and that was a contentious moment. I allude to it a little bit. Obviously, I was making the case for Khanna, so I didn't dive too much into the smoke around that. But no, that was actually, some people, and people have different minds about this kind of thing. I tend to be a kind of forgiving forgiving progressive because I think that we have to be. But some people, were ready to kind of be done with Khanna because he came out and he endorsed the establishment candidate, Joe Crowley, over AOC. That seemed like a betrayal to a lot of people. And to me, I understand why politicians do this kind of thing. My understanding was he had plans to collaborate with Joe Crowley on some legislation.
And AOC's done the same thing to an extent.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think as much as I disagreed with that decision, I'm not in the House. I don't know what it's like, right? And so, but what happened was that he got so much pushback from the grassroots movement about it, and I thought he basically listened, and he ended up coming out and endorsing both of them. Now, some people still might say that's a little bit duplicitous, right? Because obviously one candidate's better than the other. But the other way to look at it is she did not have a single endorsement from any other elected office holder. So I still think it's significant that there is some reason why these endorsements weren't coming in, right? And I can't tell you what all those reasons are, but clearly this is an act of there's some liability associated with this, right? Well, he took that on and he endorsed her, and I thought that was ultimately the right thing to do, and it was a singular thing to do. There weren't other people who did this. So I actually look at Khanna's willingness to get in early on these things as a huge sign of trust. It's one thing to sign on to something afterwards, after it looks like somebody's going to win, or after it looks like something is a big deal, it'll be good for your political future to do it. But before that, when there's risk associated with it, it really takes a lot more principle to do it. And so I've seen him as being reliable on, at a number of these moments.
Yeah, I think you're correct in that, and I agree. It was definitely disappointing at first, but I thought the way that he handled it was better than some politicians would. And I think what you're getting at is kind of a broader truth about Representative Khanna, which is that he kind of uniquely straddles both wings of the Democratic Party. I think he feels definitely at home ideologically within the progressive movement, but I think he also is able to kind of relate to and get along with, to some extent, his more establishment colleagues in the House. And of course, I mean, a lot of people might not look at that as a good thing. It's like, we didn't elect you to, go to the House and make friends with all these crooks. But on the other hand, when it comes to getting shit done and of course passing our progressive priorities, that can be looked at as a good thing because of, people are more willing to work with him or hear him out on his more lefty ideas. So I think that Ro Khanna is definitely uniquely suited as far as progressives go to kind of make some progress electorally in DC. Obviously, he's been there since 2016 now. And this, if this were to happen, if Gavin Newsom were to appoint Ro Khanna to this vacant Senate seat, I think it would increase his national prominence in a big way. Why do you think he's uniquely poised to be a new leader of this movement, which, getting the Senate seat would definitely increase his profile, make his prominence definitely rise on the national stage? California obviously has two senators like every state, but Kamala Harris, being the vice president-elect, has such a big profile now that whoever replaces her will certainly go on to inherit some of that presence on the national stage. So why do you think Ro Khanna is, uniquely suited to be a leader at that level for the progressive left?
Yeah, so you're getting at something that I didn't quite want to say outright in the article, but I'm happy to say in conversation, which is that yes, he is uniquely good at appealing to a more liberal audience as well as more of a leftist grassroots audience. And I think that another member of Congress that reminds me of this is Pramila Jayapal. She's my own representative in Congress. But yeah, I think that there's a few things that contribute to that. I think that they both bring a lot of expertise to policy. They're very policy focused. And they have just so much command over the issues that it's sort of impossible to write them off as demagogues or as being all talk and no no delivery. And then on the other hand, they just consistently deliver for the left. They have a track record, right? And so whereas certain people, they deliver all the right rhetoric, but then don't actually deliver materially and on policy. So they might
fast track
be
to the White House.
right. Well put. But,
and just to kind of expand on that really quickly, I think you alluded to it a little bit, Gavin, and Andre, you covered it in your piece. Not only was he an anti-war candidate when it was extremely unpopular to be an anti-war candidate back in 2004, but he also has been extremely strong in working with bipartisan legislation with Republicans who are, taking an anti-war position. In your piece, you talked about how, he worked with Rand Paul to try and pass a bipartisan resolution to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria. Had it not been from Donald Trump's criminal veto of the bipartisan push to have U.S. troops removed from Yemen based on the War Powers Act, that would have been a successful bipartisan legislation led largely by Bro Khanna. So I think that's 100% evidence. My question for you is, what kind of chance do you think there is that Gavin Newsom actually does this? My cynical, beaten down progressive outlook is just so unwilling to accept that anybody, other than, a more, neoliberal establishment, Silicon Valley friendly senator is going to get appointed by a guy like Gavin Newsom.
So what I'll say about that is I mean, the short answer is that I don't really know.
If you were a betting man, would you put your money on it?
If I was a betting man, I don't think I would give him better than 50-50. But on the other hand, I would say that is not a bad chance. My understanding is that, so just in terms of stuff you hear, I have heard that he's in serious consideration, which is a good thing. Obviously, in politics, there's a lot of trial ballooning. We heard all sorts of serious consideration for the vice presidency that I don't think was that serious.
Some of them who I think maybe could be potential considerations for the Senate seat that I wanted to ask you about. One of the floated names that I don't think ever was super serious, but was floated, Karen Bass, who is another name that I heard going around. Who I thought I'm. If he was, obviously I would prefer to see a guy like Bro Khanna, right? But Karen Bass, I think that could be seen as like what I guess a lot of more neoliberal blue dog Democrats would see as like an olive branch, maybe.
Yeah. So there are always olive branch candidates like that are never really quite as good as what the progressives want. But yeah, Karen Bass is one. The other one who I think is genuinely worthy of a lot of respect is Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee was the other one I was going to mention.
And the main, I think that the main case for Khanna over somebody like Barbara Lee is that, he's 44 and in his very short career has demonstrated a ton of leadership. And I think that, the left should want Khanna over somebody like Lee because we need to be filling out our bench. We need to be thinking long term. And so I think that moving him to the Senate and hopefully moving somebody like him or even better than Khanna into his old House position is a good way to kind of keep an inflow of new progressive energy that's going to be around for a while. But yeah, so my understanding is that I have at least heard that he's under serious consideration, and that like you say, he is good at straddling the concerns of different constituencies. And he's been elected in Silicon Valley 3 times. He has pushed a lot of legislation that could be seen as adversarial to Silicon Valley. We're talking digital Bill of Rights, privacy laws, even I believe he has pushed some antitrust stuff. I remember this got a lot of talk during the election. I don't remember exactly where he fell on it, but there was serious talk on the Sanders campaign of breaking up the big tech companies. And yet he seems like he has managed to maintain a good relationship with Silicon Valley. And part of the way he does it is the case he makes to them is that, it's sort of a good cop, bad cop thing, right? It's like, I'm your friend and I'm going to push some real legislation on you that's going to get people off your backs, so that you don't get something worse, right? When your reputation gets even worse because nobody passed anything. Yeah. So I think he kind of makes a pragmatic case. A lot of things that corporate America resists really hard, which I think often can be for reasons of just not wanting to be regulated, not wanting to lose control. I mean, we see that they're actually good economics, right? That actually this prevents large companies from going under and having to be bailed out and that sort of thing, right? So they don't always want what's good for them. And I think that somebody like Khanna is good at making the case that actually, a little bit of medicine now is gonna be better in the long run for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. And you mentioned Barbara Lee briefly as another possible contender. I advocated pretty heavily for Barbara Lee actually to be Joe Biden's vice president. I continue to just take so much respect, or I hold her in such high respect for her vote against the Afghanistan war, which of course none of her colleagues joined her in. Although I will agree with you that Ro Khanna is an even bigger win because, because of his role in the Sanders administration, which you kind of alluded to. Of course, Barbara Lee didn't really get involved in the presidential primary. In fact, I even believe she may have endorsed Kamala Harris.
She did.
So yeah, I think that Ro Khanna has proven to be a more reliable, ally for the progressive left when really push comes to shove. Because in my opinion, that is when push came to shove, when Bernie was running to try to, retake the Democratic Party essentially. And Ro Khanna understood the need to be on the right side of that. So I think that alone, deserves this position. And obviously California voted pretty overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. So if Gavin Newsom wanted to, accurately represent the will of his electorate in California, then I think it's just the logical thing to do. And for all the reasons you mentioned and lay out in this piece, which, I suggest that all of our listeners go check out at Medium, and we'll put the link for that in the description box below, so you can check out Andre's piece and also read his other stuff on Medium. I really enjoyed talking to you. Thanks so much for coming on, Andre.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks so much for your time tonight, man. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you very much.